members and myself, Gerald Mulligan, is chairing the meeting. I think we have Jen in listening and attendance. At any rate, the first under old business, we have a review of the minutes of the meeting of January 18th. Are there any questions or comments or changes or suggestions for those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The second item of old business is a review of the decision of case number 2193, Donegan. Are there any comments or questions or suggestions for changes on that document? Hearing none, we can consider that then is good to go. All right, and the new business, we have the continuation from our last meeting on February 1st, case number 2195, the case of Amber Gardens. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Lynn Eichholz if she has had an opportunity to review the tape and is prepared to vote and comment on the application tonight.
Yes, I did, and I am.
Good, thank you. All right, then I think that before we get questions from the board, is Ms. Thomas on, Attorney Thomas?
Yes, I am. Good evening,
Oh, yeah, there
everyone.
you are. I see you. Yeah, it takes a while to find everybody on the page here. Well, Victoria, do you have anything you'd like to add to your or comment you want to make tonight before we get into questions?
I think I updated the, thank you all. I updated the narrative to include some of the responses to the queries, the good queries we had the last hearing. One that our architect, Chris Drinan, who's here, responded to in relation to the view corridor, which again relates to the design of the replacement building, very much the same shape as the existing building, a larger footprint, but very sensitive to the shoreline district overlay view aspect in that overall design and the landscaping approach as well. The other query that came up, also a good query, and it relates to the shoreline district criteria, was in relation to the stormwater drainage. And Tim, I think Tim is here.
Yes.
Yes, there you are. Tim Brady is here, our engineer, and he helpfully provided some additional information that we submitted to supplement the application, which I hope is responsive to the concern about, any direct stormwater drainage into the surface water, which is not the case. But Tim could answer any questions on that if the board has any. I think other than that, I know we went through all the criteria, the special criteria in relation to a marijuana retailer. I did integrate, the specifics on that in the narrative. One of the key things is no visibility of product. That's why the design of the building is such that you cannot see product. It's internal only. No use of the product on the premises. We've addressed that's going to be tightly controlled, including in relation to the security plan. And there's no school to the best of my knowledge, within 500 feet of the proposed business. So I think other than that, I think we've covered everything, but we did bring the whole team. Tim's here if there's engineering questions. Chris is here if there's architectural questions. And also Shane, our CEO, is here as well. We have our COO in the background in case there's any questions that he might want to chime in on. But we're here, and we hope that the board is satisfied. But we will very much welcome any questions, and particularly any concerns that the board may have. We're very keen to understand what they might be, so we have an opportunity to address them. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Victoria. Let me at this point ask if there's anyone, before we get to the discussion with the board members, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or opposition to the application? Hearing no one coming forward. Is there no one out there? All right. Well then, members of the board, questions or comments
Would you hit the red button on that?
for the applicant?
Just hit the button.
Anyone have any questions or comments for the applicants? Mr.
I have a
Tom?
question,
Yeah.
if nobody else does, Jerry.
Please, Lynn.
And sort of, it was a follow-up from the discussion at the previous meeting that I listened to. And it's not directly relevant to the ZBA's purview, but it's something I'd like to get, an opinion from the experts. The concerns that have been raised in California about the viability of the business, I would like to hear how you view that information that's coming from California, particularly now. And my thought, is there a risk of a building being demolished and an empty lot being there for a very long time because you discover that things have changed? So I just liked it. It's not directly relevant to the criteria related to zoning, but I'd like to hear what you think about it.
Sure, I can answer that. And so I think first off, it definitely bears mentioning that Massachusetts and California are very different marketplaces in terms of cannabis. Currently, with how cannabis is treated at the federal level, each state is sort of its own market, and each state is very unique in terms of regulations, in terms of local control, license caps. And so I don't think you can make an overarching apples to apples comparison between, say, Los Angeles and California and Orleans in this part of the Cape. And more pointedly has to do with the limited number of retail establishments that are not only allowed in Orleans, which is 2, but in the surrounding communities, many of which don't allow any, such as Chatham, Dennis, and so on. And so in Massachusetts, you're only allowed 3 locations per company. And so this sort of prevents the prevalence of larger corporations, that in California, for instance, have dozens of locations, or in Florida, there's a company with over 100 locations, that you can't have this sort of, coffee shop, Dunkin' Donuts sort of scenario where these are popping up literally in every corner. Now there is, about 250 already in Massachusetts as a whole. But the Cape is actually one of the areas of the state where there's not nearly as concentrated in terms of the amount of stores.
Can you just, what is the number of stores that have been approved for the Cape?
I believe there's 5 in Provincetown, 1 in Mashpee, 2 in Eastham, and 2 in Wellfleet, I believe. And then there was 1 approved in Brewster, though I'm not sure if it's moving forward. And that's it. So that is, compared to, say, Worcester. In Worcester, there's currently 14 open, with many more approved. In Holyoke, there's nearly a dozen. In Northampton, a population of only 30,000, there's 14. And that's just in Northampton itself. And so, those are, where there's a concentration in these, it's sometimes, not even those large of population areas where there's just a huge over concentration of these stores. And that's similar to what you see in the West Coast, in Los Angeles, Portland. In Portland, there's hundreds of them. And there is, at some point, there is not enough people and consumers where all these businesses are going to be successful. However, we are really excited about this opportunity in Orleans and going through all the various process of the select board and these other boards to get to where we are today, that there's not going to be this over deluge of retail stores because of that local control and the local zoning bylaws that many of these municipalities in the Cape sort of either limit the stores or frankly don't allow it at all. So I'd say that is probably the first and foremost of all the reasons why we're excited to open here, hopefully in the Cape, and why we don't see this business as sort of being one of those struggling to survive, whether it's in Massachusetts or the West Coast, just because a lot of people visit the Cape. It's obviously world famous and tourist destination, and being one of the lucky companies that have an opportunity to open here. And with there not going to be an overabundance of competition, We feel like this is going to be a great business, both in the short, near, and long term for the cannabis industry.
Does the industry have a rule of thumb about how many per 1,000 population or 100,000 population?
So the rules in Massachusetts, there was a vote back in 2016, it seems like a lifetime ago now, but each of these municipalities voted for or against cannabis retail.
Yeah.
Or cannabis in general for any businesses being in their town. Since then, there's been some communities that have then made, overturned the initial vote, Orleans being one of them, in terms of now allowing cannabis establishments. And so the rule initially rolled out by the state is for the number of cannabis establishments that a community had to allow was a third of the liquor licenses issued by the town. And so that is sort of, a loose rhyme and reason. However, municipalities could go above that number, but if they did vote for it, they had to allow that number of basically dispensaries within their boundaries.
So it's not really a rule of thumb a business rule of thumb per 100,000 or 1,000 people. It's kind of a strange thing attached to how many liquor stores you have.
Yeah, and each state's different. In Rhode
Yeah,
Island,
okay.
attaching it to population. Others, states do it
Yeah.
differently. In Massachusetts, it's tied to liquor licenses.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether in the business among people, like you, who are expert in the business, if there has become a rule of thumb about, the marketplace such that, a store of X size per 100,000 people, this is about what it can, the population can support, if there's that kind of business rule of thumb, but it's not yet.
I
Really,
mean,
Go ahead.
I think I know what you're getting at, in terms of the viability of the business, right?
Yeah, it's like any market study, like a retail shop. Trader Joe's needs a trade area of X thousand people to open. That's what I'm asking. And, I think you're saying, no, there isn't one yet, or it really depends on the population.
And from a
Age.
regulatory perspective, it's really based on those liquor licenses. That's what the CCC
Okay.
and the state tied it to. And then from a business point of view, the things that we looked at and why we were so excited about Orleans is sort of this, the local control that prevents this crazy amount of competition. If there was going to be, 10 stores in Orleans and we're only allowed 3 in the entire state, I'm not sure Orleans would have been on our short list. And I don't know if we would have been super excited about, coming to this community.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Mr. Tav, Mr. Cole?
Only because we're on the record, I'd make 2 really quick clarifications. There was a discussion at last meeting about 48 cars. And I had not understood initially that was an ingress and egress number, as opposed to that was the maximum capacity that would be trying to be there at any one time. And I very confidently said that I was sure we would never have 48 cars there at one time. So I want to clarify that the 48 cars an hour in and out is much more believable to me, but I also think manageable. And I'll stop at that. I'm comfortable with this application, and to the extent that was a concern, I'm also comfortable. I thought, Lynn, that was the most substantial concern that was advanced, was the traffic issue, and I personally felt satisfied with that and the studies that had been done. I'm complete.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cole?
I'm complete. My questions were answered previously. I think the 2 follow-ups that I have, or maybe 3 notes, kind of following up on Lynn's questions. Number 1, there is another dispensary in Orleans that's been approved. I don't think that was noted in the list of other dispensaries on the Cape. our permit runs for 3 years. So there is somewhat of a limited duration to this, where they'd have to come back in for reapproval at that time. And correct me if I'm wrong. The third point is that the building, it is and will be owned by a different entity. So if in the case of this building going, or this business going out of business, theoretically, that separate ownership would put the building back into reuse with another entity, and it wouldn't sit there indefinitely. Anyways, I had a series of questions last time. They were all satisfactorily answered, and I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't really studied it, but I'm puzzled by the number of hurdles and the time frame that you have to go through at the state level. I guess my question is, where are you now, and what more do you have to do before you're allowed to break ground?
So we already have the provisional license. We had that issued to us last year in May, and it being finalized in July. So in terms of, what else is needed from the state and sort of the process going forward, if we get this board's approval, would be to pull the various building permits and demolition permits from the town. The state needs to see those permits, and as I know, our architectural plans, they mostly just want to look at it for security reasons, to make sure it's up to date to their security qualifications and minimums. And after they basically give sign off, it's really, we've already had it for another one of our businesses. It's just an email chain sign off. Essentially, they say, okay, you're good to go. And once that email comes from the state, we're able to break ground. And so that's actually a relatively quick process. They usually get back to you within 2 to 3 weeks on that. Okay. And so, I'm not sure. I've heard that, it's taking about 3 to 5 weeks right now to get building permits in Orleans. I have no idea what that will be once we go forward. But after we had those building permits and demo permits secured, we would go to the state, get that approval in the 2 to 3 week time frame that they turn around and kind of say, okay, to your plans. And then we would begin construction. And so we're hoping to get going sometime in April, if we are fortunate enough to get an approval tonight. And then we think it will be about a 6 to 7 month build period. And then after that build period, the state, after we get our CO from the building inspector in town and any sign-offs we need from fire, police, and what have you, the state themselves then comes out and inspects the building. If they're okay with it, we get listed on the agenda for the formal CCC, Cannabis Control Commission again. And if they, like everything they've seen, and they've actually never rejected anybody who's gone to that point in the state, they would issue the final license. And then we would shortly thereafter be able to commence operations. So we're hoping, maybe this time next year.
Do you know where the other shop is in town, or where they are in the process? Or
I know they have the approval from this board. I know they have their state license as well. I can't speak to where they're at in the process of actually building out their location. Obviously, their location is already an existing structure, whereas ours is a brand new one. So obviously there'll be a delta there, but I can't speak to where they are in the process.
Yeah,
No.
I'm just curious. No, there's no relevance to this discussion tonight, but just resident curiosity. Are there any other comments or questions? All right. Well, what's your pleasure? Do we have a motion?
Can I just ask the board if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Victoria.
Okay, my apologies. I'm having a strange Zoom application error here, but you can hear me, so I can't seem to get the camera to work.
That's all right. Do you have to add anything, or would you like to add something?
Just again, are there any concerns that that the board has that other than what's been raised that we can answer?
I don't think so. I think everyone has spoken. And so let me go at this point and say that from a conversation we had earlier in the week, you're prepared to go forward with a vote of 4. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yeah, I mean, I would be prepared to go forward. If there is any other concerns from any of these board members, obviously
One
this
of
is
us votes against.
monumental, milestone for our company. And we would, it's an essential step for us to move forward as a business. We put a lot of money, effort in the last 24 months, coming this March now, 24 months in order to open up this location. And have, gone through all the previous boards, to really get this application, what we think is in the best shape for both us as a business to first succeed, but also to blend in with the character of the town and do right by our abutters and neighbors. And so, if there was any other concerns that if we think that, the board wouldn't be able to move forward, we would love an opportunity to rectify those. But if there's not, we are comfortable moving forward with the vote.
Well, I think everyone has spoken and no one seems to be interested in grabbing the mic. So at this point, I would move to approve the application. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Cole. All right, I'd like to call the roll. Mr. Taub. Okay, Mr. Taub, can you hear me? You're
I
muted.
apologize. Aye.
Aye. Ms. Icoll,
Yes,
Mr. Cole,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. So it's a vote of 4-0. The motion passes and you've been granted permission of the special permit.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you all
congratulations.
so much. Thank you.
Congratulations. It was a very well done application. And I'm sort of with Ms. Icoll. I'm looking forward to seeing how this all shakes out. So good luck to you all.
I really appreciate it. And I think, definitely encourage you all to visit when we open. I think even if you don't partake, I think we're going to build something really special. I think being able to have a blank canvas, so to speak. And I know Chris is excited for being, part of this process, but I think we've designed something really special. I think we'll stand out not only down the Cape, but across the Commonwealth of something that people want to go visit, let alone for purchasing any cannabis or even just for the experience. So thank you all again for granting us permission.
You're very welcome. Good night.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Mulligan, if I could, just one quick question. What is the appeal period on these special permit decisions?
Well, is it 20 days, Matt?
Yeah, from the date that the clerk stamps it. So there's a little bit
Yeah.
of time before that starts tolling.
Yeah,
Of
so
course.
what happens, I'll write the decision and it'll be reviewed at the next meeting, which is March 1st. And if there's no questions, that'll be filed on March 2nd. And then it's 20 days for someone to object.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, good luck. And again, I hope you guys heard the feedback on the traffic issue and follow through on those controls to keep that area manageable. Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
Same to you. Members of the board, I have nothing else. Anybody have anything else to discuss before the board tonight? Any issues?
Mr. Mulligan, I noticed on the town site that there was, for lack of a better word, an advertisement seeking ZBA members, and I trusted that that was your effort, and I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, as
I had
myself and
the
Lynn.
odd thought that in as much as we didn't have a meeting on the 5th Wednesday, that if there were any live candidates out there, it might be interesting to welcome them to a non-meeting. After all, the meetings can be immensely intimidating if you're new at them. The lingo is flying around, and I just had the thought, was there any purpose if there were any real candidates out there and inviting them? Thank you.
Well, I have spoken with one who was referred to me, a young man, and he seemed to be enthusiastic, and I'm hopeful. But yeah, we've had, Lynn and I have made this point that it's at some point, it's almost dysfunctional trying to get a quorum, and we do desperately need associate members. And that's been taken up by town council, who has made that note to the selectmen and to, well, the town manager on many occasions, he tells me. And I know that George Meservey and Tom Evers, of course, know that we're in desperate need. So I think it's understood that we need. I must confess to you that I've spoken to a number of people, some of whom I was pretty sure I could convince to join, but it's a harder sell than I thought it was going to be, frankly. I don't know. I think this is a fun board. I think this is an interesting mental exercise as we go through. And I think it would be, I think a lot of people would enjoy it, but I can't seem to identify them.
Well, I suppose that the message here is that we each should double our efforts at finding people. You're doing such a nice job, Jerry, really. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sorry for the strain, so thanks.
No. Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Thanks, everybody. Sorry to be a couple minutes late.
Good night, all. Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Good night.